Welcome to Rotten Taste, where we take a look at movies that are under 60% on Tomatoes and tell you what we think of them. And today we are looking at the 1994 film, The Next Karate Kid, starring Hilary Swank. And Pat Morita, of course. He does return for
Oh,
this one.
oh yeah.
This movie, Soto,
Hmm.
7% on Rotten
Yeah.
Tomatoes, making it officially the worst reviewed movie we have ever watched on this channel. So,
Wow.
about
What
a year
was the
ago,
Dream a Little Dream at?
Dream a
What was
Little Dream
Dream a Little
had
Dream?
9%.
For
Dream a Little
reference?
Dream had 9%. Yep. And
Okay.
Sharks of the Corn had no reviews. So I mean,
Yeah, as we know,
that.
yeah,
But yes, this movie is
it barely
7%.
qualifies. Barely qualifies as actual film, but I digress.
But anyhow, when we did the Karate Kid Part 3 about a year or two
Hmm.
ago. Obviously with Cobra Kai and everything, I brought up the next Karate Kid, and you mentioned to me you've never seen this film. So
Yeah,
I'm going
I
to kind of
missed it.
start the ball with you. You're not having growing up with this film, not like I did. I believe it or not, Soto. I know I said in the Karate Kid Part 3 that was like the most watched one because it was always on TV. This
Yeah.
followed it because they always played them back to back. So a lot of times I would have
Really?
it on the background. Yes, I just laughed how many times during like a summer it was like Karate Kid Part 3, next Karate Kid. That's what I remember a lot about. Like TBS or HBO. I don't know. I don't know which cable channel. I digress. You've never seen this film, so this is your first time watching it. Before you get
Yeah.
into what were your expectations going in? And what are your thoughts of, finally seeing this film? Let's start with you. What were your expectations of the next Karate Kid?
Well, as I have said, yeah, I just couldn't believe that it would be so low rated. I just was skeptical about how bad it was. I've seen a lot of bad movies, and I accept that some movies are just not for everybody, but I did not expect that this movie could be potentially bad, especially with Pat Morita in it. When this movie started, I was like, okay, all right. Like, for about like a few minutes, you get Pat Morita, you get like a nice ceremony going on, recognizing like the efforts of World War II and the horrors and all that stuff, and I'm like instantly happy because I'm seeing Mr. Miyagi,
Correct.
who I believe is like, I cannot believe that Cobra Kai is as popular as it is. I mean, Johnny Lawrence has a lot to do with that, or Billy Zabka, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's as popular as it is without Pat Morita because he's like, to me, my favorite part about Karate Kid. So I'm digging it. I'm like, this is not so bad. Everything's going well. And then like Hilary Swank comes into the movie. And this is an Oscar-winning actress. I've seen her in other films, and I've never thought she was so bad. But I think that the what makes this movie terrible is how bad she actually is in this movie. Like she is, it's almost like she's doing a really bad impression of Ralph Macchio when Ralph Macchio is as annoying as he is in the other Karate Kid movies. It's like
Yeah.
Hilary Swank's take on Ralph Macchio, and nothing that she does is redeeming at all in this entire movie. And I'll preface it. I'll highlight one of the weirdest parts of this movie, and then you can tell me what you think about this. And I'm sure this is on your notes. Okay, so spoiler alert: they're in a monastery, right? And she tries to go kill a cockroach. She's obviously learning how to be peaceful, and Mr. Miyagi's trying to teach her stuff. Which, by the way, is this monastery in New Hampshire? Because I didn't know this movie was set in fucking Boston.
Yeah, I don't remember where the monastery was. I know he said we had to travel a bit, so I
Well, in
don't
my
know
head
where.
canon, they went to fucking Nashua. And in Nashua, there's a fucking monastery where these, Japanese monks sit there, they talk about karate, and they try to just be one. They're like Buddhists or some shit. So, anyways, she tries to kill a cockroach during dinner. They all like shun her, right? And, because they're trying to teach her a lesson that like all life is important and all that stuff, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so fast forward to she's in a field of whatever, and then she just randomly comes across a praying mantis. Just randomly comes across a praying mantis, and maybe I missed something, but she just grabs it and then just runs off into the distance, and like she just figured something out, and then all of a sudden she realizes life is precious. But it was one of the most ridiculous scenes in the movie, and that's exactly when I knew that this movie was off the rails, like terrible. So that was when I was like, okay, this movie is going to be a chore to get through because Pat Morita is great in every scene that he is. Although slightly creepy during the weird, like, she's trying on her dress prom scene because he's like, I don't know, thinking that she's the daughter that he never had. That was kind of weird for me. But generally, I enjoyed everything that Pat Morita did in this movie. But Hilary Swank makes this movie terrible. And I have no idea how the fuck this is supposed to tie into Cobra Kai in any sort of way that's going to make anybody happy to see her show up in that TV show. And I would love to know, I know I just spewed a bunch at you, but I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this.
Let's cut out Cobra Kai for a minute and get to the end. Let's more talk about this movie and that scene and everything. I'm surprised because that was like halfway in the movie. But yeah, no, that was a ridiculous part. She basically takes this animal, the mantis, and, from the fields that it's been living and takes it in the monastery. It probably had a family out there in the fields and she just took it away. But I know the idea was she was bringing life and this mantis, should enjoy life, in the monastery, blah, blah, blah.
God.
No, this movie went off the rails long before that. Now, originally, I kind of liked the idea because obviously they could not get Ralph Macchio. Not that they couldn't get him, but Ralph Macchio was in his 30s when this came out, and he's not exactly a kid. Yes, because he was 29 in Karate Kid Part 3. No, in Karate Kid Part 3, he was like 39. Or 29, excuse me, 29. All right, hold on. He was 29 when Karate Kid 3 came out, and this came out, I think, he was in his 30s, regardless.
Sure.
So, yes.
He's way older than he looked, yeah.
Well, yes. But then, doing something new, which they obviously did not need to make this, but I'm like, okay, a female. This is going to create a kind of interesting dynamic for Mr. Miyagi because it's not something he's used to. Because, like you said, he's been used to Daniel. He's been used to just, he never had kids of his own. So, yes, Julie Pierce, Hilary Swank,
Julie-san.
Yes, Julie-san. Her parents died in a car accident. Now, I'm surprised it took you that long to figure this, because here's where the movie went off the rails for me. And I'm going to start from the beginning. I did love the beginning. I liked the fact that it was in Boston. They took him out of his normal home, something different. And that's kind of what you want in a way. Not that it's a remake, but just the idea that it's something different. They want to step away from the first trilogy. And here's the funny thing. So they're there. Hilary Swank comes in, and she acts like the bratty teen, hi, and then walks away. So after all that's happened. The grandma's just like, I want you to meet Mr. Miyagi. This is your grandfather's, he fought in the war, they're friends, blah, blah, blah. And she leaves. And then Mr. Miyagi comes up with the idea, why don't you go to my place on the other side of the country, take care of the flowers, have a vacation, and I'll stay here and take care of your granddaughter. This grandmother's never talked about again the rest of the friggin' movie. She just takes a blind vacation. Who picked her up in there? How did she know?
We have no idea. She
Like,
disappeared.
It's just, and they're like, okay,
plot
everything.
reasons.
Exactly. This whole movie happens for plot reasons. Now, I know I saw this as a teen. I watched it a few times. I never loved it, but
a few times, damn.
I think, well, because it was on, and a lot of times it's on the background doing homework. But I really only remember two scenes from it, because it's been so long, or maybe just because I erased a lot of it. When they're in the monastery, the bow and arrow scene, which is ridiculous as itself, where they shoot a bow at Mr. Miyagi's chest and he catches it.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming. I didn't know what was going to happen there.
Well, I always remember that, and I remember the end. Everything else I kind of forgot. So in a way, I was like, all right, let me refresh myself. And as I'm watching this, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is when it goes off the rails. And all because Hilary Swank runs away from Mr. Miyagi. She gets into a tiger pose, jumps on the car that's about to hit her, and he realizes, she knows he's a little karate. He, my friend taught her dad, and her dad taught her, so he knew, and that was kind of the connection. But
yeah,
I think that and you're right. They did do, he's like, boys are much easier than girls, blah, blah, blah. He accidentally walks in. And I think it's just meant to make the awkwardness happen a little bit. So let's talk about the bad guys, the main villains. Because I remember when I was talking Next Karate Kid with you, you're like, oh, is Cobra Kai? And I said, no, there's no Cobra Kai. There's no real karate dojos. And you're like, what the hell is it about? So yeah, she's at school, and somehow she's, the reject. She's always getting in trouble. And there's a band of, I guess, military high schoolers, seniors who kind of just see order to the school. And, basically the very first time you meet the main, not like the Michael Ironside, like the teacher or the sergeant, but like the main bad guy that's her age, he's trying to kiss her, fondle her hair and all that. It comes off
so gross.
Totally creepy. What were your thoughts of not having, I mean, I know she got quickly trained and they didn't really show much of it karate. But what are your thoughts of having this group as like kind of the main villains? Because it seemed really out there and just I don't know, out of place to me.
Well, you can't go back to Cobra Kai, right? I think that the main issue with the next Karate Kid is that you could just tell that the formula was completely tapped out. Um, again, the Miyagi thing, they tried to kind of have some Easter eggs like that went back to it a little bit, but like that whatever militant wing of the school was such a just awful, like just bland bad guy thing in the movie, and the fact that they added like just creepy sexual assault vibes and shit to it. I think the best part of that group is that Walton Goggins is in it, and he's also in the Fallout show, and he's in a ton of other stuff like Justified. He's been, in a ton of other movies. But when I saw him, I was like, oh my god, Walton Goggins. Um, but yeah, like it was just a shadow of the whole Cobra Kai thing, and I think that it just showed that they had just run out of ideas, and they were just like, oh, let's just put another. It's like a vehicle for Pat Morita, and they're gonna add, a different gender to it. It's gonna be all like fresh and whatever. It really killed the franchise uh, for years, and I can see why after watching this movie like that. Nobody wanted to do any Karate Kid stuff until what, the last few years.
Correct, or whenever the first
Yeah,
Cobra Kai.
exactly.
I mean I don't remember when that season came
It,
out, like 2015, 16 maybe. I mean I
It's a
know they
franchise killing movie. It just really
this
is.
definitely
It
was
was absolutely terrible. Like the ending was, and I could talk little bit about that. I know you want to talk about it, but the ending
no. Let's
is
go. Yeah,
just so contrived and like being like, oh, we kicked a lot of butt, didn't we, Mr. Miyagi? And I was like, somebody wrote this. I mean, Mr. Miyagi is a man of peace and not fighting. And that whole like sequence at the end was like about pride and being like, oh, he's like, oh, no, don't fight, but then if you do have to fight, make sure you win. It's like, oh my God, it was absolutely like thrown on and tacked on, and it was just absolutely terrible.
no, agreed. Because in the very going back to the first Karate Kid, and that's the big thing. Daniel is in that tournament at the end, and he gets his leg
Hmm.
kind of crippled a little bit, and he's going to be taken out, and he wants Mr. Miyagi to fix him. Mr. Miyagi's like, "You've already proven yourself," and Daniel the
Yeah.
point then was Daniel was like, "I won't have balance. Every time that they look at me, they know they have best of me. How can I have balance with you, Allie, or myself?" So he had a reason. Yes, he wasn't fighting. He wasn't there yet, and I think that's why Mr. Miyagi helped him with that leg
Right.
massage thing, and then he came back.
Hmm.
You're right. At the end of this, she's like, "Let me fight him," and then it's like he's like, "Why? Let's just leave." And
Just call the
he's like, "No."
police.
He's like, "Well, remember that was the quick line. Like, they kind of control the police or whatnot. I don't know what's true, what's
Oh,
not.
come
Who
on.
knows? Well, I know. Again, movie tropes. Let's just. I'm not
Yes.
saying whether you believe or
Plot
not, but movie
reasons.
plot reasons. The police are going to believe all the military guys over, Mr. Miyagi and Hilary Swank. But she's just like, let me fight him, and Mr. Miyagi just
Oh,
gives in so easy. Yes, it's time,
yeah.
kind of thing. It's like it didn't seem like it wasn't to prove herself in a reason. It was just like I can take out this one guy after her boyfriend gets beat up by like five guys. And
Oh.
I don't know. The whole movie just was just quick scene to scene. The monks were the best part. Though I guess the only time I really laughed was the bowling scene for some reason. It was so stupid and out of
Yeah.
place. I'm like, all right, here's what I'm
Oh
loving
yeah,
in
that
this
part. I
non
forgot about
karate
that part.
movie. But
Forgot
that should
completely
not
about
be
that
the
shit.
best part of your movie.
No.
You know what I'm?
No.
Um,
That's really all this movie is in this franchise. It's just kind of like an afterthought with kind of Karate Kid sort of ideas, and obviously the soundtrack is still kind of the same. Um, but yeah, like the only thing that was Karate Kid about this movie for me was really just that Pat Morita was in it.
yeah.
So it's almost like a fucking side story to the Karate Kid lore. So, and if she shows up, plus Hilary Swank is expensive. Like she's not just like a struggling like person that can't get work. Like she's again two-time Oscar award winner going on a Netflix TV show. So a cameo is probably what they have in the budget.
Yeah, but I think that
You know?
story wise, because they're going overseas for the tournament, I forget the name of that. And like I said, I mean, again,
Oh yeah.
they bring together everything in a way, and I think they'll just do this logically, and that's the only way. But as far as this movie goes, let's just try something different. We got Pat Morita for one more film. Let's make it a girl, and Nothing worked. And I feel
No,
bad because, like you said, I mean, she just comes off as not that likable of a character. None of them really,
not
I
at
mean,
all.
outside of Mr. Miyagi, because no matter what he does in these movies, he's great. But I think this
Absolutely.
is a disservice to the franchise. But it does exist. It is canon, and therefore that's why we watched it, even though it's 7% So
Oh God, her 32-year-old boyfriend too, like from high school. The security guard that just, oh, it was just so bad. Everything was just terrible in this movie except for Pat Morita.
yes, when the best part of this movie is, a character we already love and just try and do the best in the scenes. And like I said, the best part was maybe those monks and, just the
Yeah.
bowling scene because it was funny and it was just out there. And I think just because it broke up everything else that was shit, I'm like, all right, I'm laughing at this. They're happy about their strikes. They're praying for their strikes. They're doing these weird things. I'm like, I laughed. It was stupid. It did
It
not
was, yeah.
belong in a next Karate Kid film, but
Yeah.
that's the best part of this movie. Or what? Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, now that you've watched it, you don't need to watch this again. I mean, unless you
I
truly, truly
won't.
want to. Yeah, we
I
don't need to.
won't.
We,
This is it. This is my final say on the next Karate Kid. I mean, if I see it on TV, I'll change the channel. I will never watch this again. I have zero interest in watching this again.
uh, but let us know what you thought of the next Karate Kid. How bad is this movie? Or tell us if you actually liked it or what parts you liked. We will listen. We might think you're wrong, but we'll still listen. So,
Hmm.
but until next time, yeah, just watch the original trilogy. They're much better. They're
Yeah,
easier. Boys are
they're
easier.
way easier. Mike Barnes, he's the best.